God help us. I mean, we do have some very bright, young, courageous, within quotation marks, reformers that are being empowered by government to help us steer through these very difficult times in our country. My fear is that from the little I have seen so far, the reformers may actually end up being reformed by the bureaucracy. Because it is a very strong bureaucracy that is still running the country. Supervision is still control in this country. It's always legislation, the law, the regulation before innovation. And my friend Yared has put it very nicely. How can you ever regulate something that is not even created? I mean, in the olden days, during the emperor's time, Ethiopians used to have a share market. I mean, it is in the books, it is written. I even have clippings of the newspapers of the 1960s, early 1960s, where it said there was a meeting of the share dealing group in the National Bank of Ethiopia under the chairmanship of the governor. During that session, the shares of Sabat Edge, Wendishwa Sugar Factory, etc., were sold for so much. The only thing that made it different was that people traded for themselves. They had no brokers. But we had a share market. And when we went, we could not get a share market or a stock market established in this country. We went a very sweet letter to the Minister of Finance. Now, of course, not the Minister of Finance anymore. That was Sufyan from the Ethiopian Chamber. And we said, look, you told us that we cannot establish a share market in this country because the regulatory framework is not here. All right. There was no regulatory framework during the emperor's time, and we still had a share dealing group. Can we restart the share dealing group where people who own shares can buy and sell shares? No brokers, no third parties to be victimized here. I said, no, you can't do that. The regulatory framework has to be there. We did a mobile banking proposal and went to the National Bank of Ethiopia about 4 or 5 years ago. I said, the regulatory framework is not here. You cannot do it. Look, that has to change. Attitude has to change. People in the bureaucracy must first of all be trained or reoriented to believe in fair competition. They don't believe in fair competition. My company goes and wins a business after competing with the government institutions or enterprises that do the same business that I do. I win in some cases for good reasons. But then finally they say, sorry, this has government investment. It has to go to a government insurance or bank. That's it. And these are the people that are going to bring change. Look, I think if the world of the Yareds, the two young Yareds, is coming to be, then governors will have no place. You heard Bitcoins. The authority, the power of printing money is being taken away from the central banks. Mergers and acquisitions was mentioned this morning. For heaven's sake, what has government to do with that? You simply say, 2 years from now or 3 years from now, I want all banks to have a paid-up capital of 5 million or 10 million birr. Full stop. The banks will do the merging. The banks will do the acquisition. Government doesn't have to be involved. It's the same thing with the insurance companies. Look, diaspora Ethiopians, and it's being quoted here. I know I fought for this for the last I don't know how many years. But do you know what it says? If a diaspora is going to buy a share in a financial institution in Ethiopia, yes, he or she has to pay in dollars. That is fine. They have to do the transaction in Ethiopia. And the improved concession was these transactions have to be done in an Ethiopian embassy. It doesn't stop there. I know the regulation is not yet formal, but they say, if you are selling shares to diaspora Ethiopians in dollars, you have to cede the dollars to the National Bank of Ethiopia. Can you imagine? My company sells shares in dollars, and the dollars have to go to the National Bank. Look, we can talk about this for ages, right? The stock market 2020, we have been promised. Yared and I are two important witnesses here. Government has promised us. The National Bank is now talking about a treasury bill market. Oh, we will have to get used to that first, and then we'll talk about share market, a capital market. What about the promise to young inventors, entrepreneurs with wonderful bankable ideas but with no money? Where do they go to start their businesses, startups? They can't go to the bank at 18, 19% interest rate, especially if their projects have gestation periods of 2 to 3 years. They would be swamped with the debt from the interest rate. There has to be a capital market where people could raise money simply based on the inventions, on their innovative ideas. That is the kind of market we're looking for. Thank you.